get godly reminders. Isn't he so good? And this was, I will tell you, I have at least lived long enough that dying young is no longer a concern.
Oh.
So I ran across this passage. Do you like the book of Isaiah?
I know.
Do you? I'm determined I'm going to read it 3 more times this week because I've never really embraced Isaiah, but there's so much depth in it. Anyway, so Isaiah 46, verses 3 through 5 says, "Listen to me, you descendants of Jacob, all the remnant of the people of Israel, you whom I have upheld since your birth and have carried since you were born, even to your old age and gray hairs, I am he. I am he who will sustain you. I have made you, and I will carry you. I will sustain you, and I will rescue you. With whom will you compare me or count me equal? To whom will you liken me that we may be compared?" You know that life comes in seasons. And some of those seasons, they arrive with excitement, right? It's new beginnings and these fresh opportunities and then unexpected blessings. And others come quietly, and they're marked by the passing of time, and there's uncertainty, and there's slowing of time. And if we're honest, every season brings its own questions. Am I still useful? Does God still see me? Will he carry me through this? And perhaps maybe you've never experienced that, but it's common for most people. So when Isaiah, he's speaking into this very question with a voice full of tenderness and authority. And God's not just reminding his people of what he has done. He reminds us and them of who he's always been from the first breath to the final chapter. He's been the one carrying and sustaining and guiding his children. So today, this message I wrote is not simply about growing older. It's about growing deeper in trust. It's about discovering that the God who held us at the beginning is the same God who holds us now.
What verse do you have?
Isaiah, I have NIV.
Isaiah what?
46, verses 3 through 5. Isaiah 46, verses 3 through 5.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So what I'm hoping to encourage with today is that God carries us in every season so we can trust him in every moment. And so that brings us to the first truth Isaiah wants us to hear. That is, God assures us of his care. We see his call to us in verse 3, Isaiah 46, 3. "Listen to me, you descendants of Jacob, all the remnant of the people of Israel, you whom I have upheld since your birth and have carried since you were born." So God begins this passage with this tender command. He says, "Listen to me." It isn't the voice of some distant deity that's far separated, but rather it's a Father that's present, and he has been from the very beginning. And so before Israel ever took the first step, before Israel even knew what Israel meant, God was already carrying them. Before they knew his name, he knew theirs. This verse reminds us to recognize our identity as his children. God addresses his people by name. He says, Jacob, Israel, remnant. You know that identity is not something we earn. It's something God bestows, right? And I have a title. It's Reverend Bert Schwab. That is an earned title through credentials. My identity is I am a child of God. I may operate as a pastor, maybe as a prophet sometimes, but my identity is as a child of God. And that identity isn't something I've earned, it's something God has given through His grace and through His love. And so what happens when our earthly identity is challenged? We can fall apart if that's what we're leading into, right? See, and here's the other thing. We're not defined by our failures, our fears, or our circumstances. We're defined by the one who formed us and calls us His own. In seasons of uncertainty, I'm guessing that you've gone through some seasons of uncertainty in your life. In seasons of uncertainty, remembering who we are and whose we are, that gives us an anchor point for our hearts. I wish I had a great prescription of how to always do that. That comes from a personal relationship with God. This identity it's relational. It's not merely theological. God's not talking to strangers. He's talking to His family. There's a difference. He's talking to His children. And it's about, His assurance of care is about understanding His lifelong commitment. God says He has upheld us since your birth and carried us since you were born. See, His care is not occasional. It's continual. From the first breath to the final moment, God's commitment does not waver. He is the one who carries, sustains, and protects. And this lifelong care is not dependent on our strength. And I say thank God for that. In fact, it's most visible when we're weak. You remember that plaque image, Footprints?
Mm-hmm.
You remember that? We have one here somewhere?
I don't have it with me, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, where the person looks at the back on his life and the footprints in the sand and talking to Jesus. He says there were times where there's only one set of footprints. And Jesus says, those were the times I carried you. It's looking back, this image of a parental God that's lifting, supporting, and guiding His children through every stage of life. It's His faithfulness in the past that becomes the foundation for our confidence in the present. And it's about His sustaining presence. After reminding us of who we are, His beloved children, God deepens this invitation because identity naturally leads into trust. If He has called us His own, then it follows that He will also stay with us. Isaiah's words reveal a God that's not merely at the present, or the beginning rather, not present at the beginning of our story, but active in every chapter. God carries us through all stages of life, and it's from infancy to adulthood, from strength to frailty. God's posture toward His people never shifts. I was talking to a coworker this past week, reminiscing. Believe it or not, there was a time I was more athletically active, shall we say. And for a short season, I got into indoor rock climbing, okay, where there's these various walls and stuff. And I really enjoyed it. And I shared with him the story of me being me and trash talking my rock climbing partner about who could climb the wall fastest, okay? And obviously I said it a little too loud because there was this gal about this tall. It seemed like she was half my weight. She climbed that wall twice as fast as I possibly could have, okay, in my best day. I'm like, well, that's humbling. Today, I don't even want to climb a ladder. I can hardly see my feet when I look down. We change, but God doesn't, and He sustains us through these times, and He carries us when we can't walk, and He steadies us when we stumble, and walks beside us when we are strong enough to stand. See, life seasons may change, but His sustaining presence does not. And this sustaining presence gives us assurance that we're never alone. Loneliness is certainly one of the enemy's favorite weapons.
That's how come I have a cat.
Yes. I have a cat. It's one of the enemy's most persistent lies. He just keeps pressing that into our heads all the time and tries to make us feel isolated. But Scriptures repeatedly counters it with God's presence, with God's promise, rather, that I am always with you. Even Jesus said, I am with you even to the end. And whether we face transitions, losses, new responsibilities, God's nearness is constant. And it's not a symbolic presence. It's not, it's active, it's protective, and it's deeply personal. You know, spoke with a pastor friend of mine in Tennessee just yesterday. We had a great conversation. And I lift him up in prayer. I lift his family up in prayer. See, that's a relational connection we have. However, if he was in very real, I need help right now, what am I going to do this far away? But that's not what we have with God. God is right there all the time. And it's so, although in our lives we can try to live out those examples of being there for somebody, we can never meet the same standard that God has set. I mean, He is always there in every place, every dark corner we're in. God is there with us and for us. And He carries us in every season so we can trust Him in every moment. And because God carries us, we can face each season with confidence. I really wish I'd mastered this. I haven't. But the fact that we can leads us to the next truth Isaiah highlights. God not only sustains us, He has purpose woven into every stage of our life. Verse 4 of Isaiah 46, verse 4. Even to your old age and gray hairs, I am He. I am He who will sustain you. I have made you, and I will carry you. I will sustain you, and I will rescue you. Because God's care is not random, it's purposeful. The same God who formed us also guides us. And His plan doesn't expire with age, nor does it diminish with time. Instead, each season becomes an opportunity for His grace to be displayed. You know, each age has unique contributions. Youth brings energy and vision, right? But maturity brings wisdom and perspective. God values every stage. He doesn't waste a single. I love the phrase, God doesn't waste a hurt. Well, He doesn't waste any of our stages either. And none of our stages is insignificant. We're at whatever stage you're in life, it's significant. What we offer in one season may be different, usually as from another, but each contribution matters to Him. Understanding God's purpose in every season includes embracing new roles and responsibilities. As life shifts, so do our roles, right? Parenting changes, right? We don't have the same parenting roles for our adult children that we do when they were young. careers evolve, ministries expand or conclude. Sometimes they conclude and a new one starts. As life shifts, so do our roles. So rather than resisting these transitions, God invites us to embrace them as part of His design. And new seasons often reveal new strengths and refresh opportunities to serve. God's purpose in every season includes His promise of fruitfulness. You know, His purpose is never stagnant. It never just becomes stale. It's no matter our age or our circumstance, He continues to cultivate growth within us, and He'll open doors for ministry, influence, and compassion at every stage of life. Sometimes the opportunities are public. That's true. But most often they're done in private. But they're always meaningful. One of my favorite things to do in ministry, and has been my whole life, is things that nobody knows about. And whether that's sitting and just listening to somebody that is hurting, maybe fixing parking lot lights, or helping with decorations. I've known several pastors that I've sat under, always intrigued why I don't sign up for a role, maintenance or whatever. It's because my favorite thing to do is not be seen when I'm serving. And I do enjoy pulpit. I do enjoy being in the front. Don't get me wrong. But there's just something about hearing someone say, "That is so great that they've got the parking lot that again," because I was really feeling unsafe. And it makes me feel good inside that God was able to use my skills to help somebody else feel a little more secure when the parking lot is icy, or when it's dark after Bible study. And I really try not to let people know that I was involved in things. This past year, I was asked to help with some stage decorations, these Christmas trees made out of pallet wood, and word got around that I made them. and it was fun to do, but it wasn't, I enjoy doing that without the public recognition. And so often that's how God uses all of us in ministry. It's that you may minister to somebody at the checkout line and you didn't even realize that God was opening that opportunity. You might, certainly you serve here at church, and that's wonderful that you do, and that's a little more public. But there's some fulfillment that you get in each of those. Fruitfulness is not measured by activity, but rather by faithfulness. If we could embrace that, I think we would find much more joy in every season. And certainly there's testimonies of faith that inspires others. I have said just about every time I've been here, what a pleasure it is to come here. I'm going to let you in on a secret. Okay. I hear Chris's stories of the people from this church, how they've shaped her life and influenced her life. I am tickled to death that I get to be here. I am serious when I say that. It is such a blessing to me, having heard years of the stories. Long before we came here, I heard of people that are in this very church that have had an influence on my wife when she was young. And I know that there are hundreds and hundreds more people that can say the same thing. And that's exciting to me. It's a true blessing inside of me that somehow I get to speak back and try to encourage people that encourage my wife to help her become the godly woman she is. A life walked with God becomes a living testimony. Younger generations draw strength from the stories of those who have continued through faith, have endured with faith, I should say. Our experience, both victories and struggles, become seeds of encouragement for others. Psalm 92, 14 and 15 says, they will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no wickedness in him. He's talking about faithful people, people that stay faithful. If you were to read the whole Psalm 92, you'll see how David is drawing out about how the wicked seem to prosper for a time in this earth, but the faithful, they're the ones that really make the lasting impact. And they're the ones that will continue in their older age to still encourage others, and with their life, they're proclaiming that the Lord is upright. He's their rock. So God carries us in every season, so we can trust him in every moment. Well, the ongoing fruitfulness is possible because God himself doesn't change. His character is the anchor that holds us steady through every season. When we understand that God has purpose in every season, we begin to see our lives not as a series of disconnected moments, but as a continuous story of faithfulness. And that faithfulness is rooted in something even deeper, which is his unchanging nature. Isaiah 46:4 speaks of his faithfulness through generations. He repeats God's promise to emphasize a truth we often forget, and that is God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, because his faithfulness is not dependent on our circumstances or our age. God's character remains constant. Do you realize that our character tends to change over time? For some, unfortunately, it changes for the worse, but for others, it changes for the better. To say that we're the same as we've always been is just simply not true. But God's nature never changes. What we hope for as we progress in our faith walk is that our nature becomes more like God, more Christ-like. That is our hope. See, human strength fades, but God's strength does not. Our understanding shifts, but his wisdom is eternal. Because his character is unchanging, his promises are unshakable. I believe that's why I love the Old Testament so much. I see how the Old Testament is written into the New Testament, and you can see through all of man's history that God has not changed. He is the same God, so I can trust in his promises. And that's regardless of age, whether we're stepping into adulthood or walking through later years, God's promises remain equally true. So then trust becomes the bridge between God's unchanging nature and our ever-changing lives. We can rest in the assurance that he's going to finish what he began. Knowing that God is faithful invites a response from us, not fear, not striving, but trust. His unchanging nature is not just a theological truth. It's a personal invitation. He's inviting us, encouraging us to lean on him in uncertainty. Does the future ever feel unclear to you? Pretty much. God calls us to lean into his strength rather than our own. It's this isn't a passive trust. It's an active choice to place our confidence in God's care. And he meets us in our uncertainty with steady hands and a faithful heart. His invitation to trust is finding strength in his everlasting love. Because it's not seasonal. God's love is not seasonal. You know, February is the month of love, right? Our Valentine month. Well, I think some people just kind of park their love for one day in February and that's it. God's love is not seasonal. It's eternal. His love strengthens, restores, and sustains us. And when we trust in his love, we find courage for today and hope for tomorrow. Because God never changes, our response is simple. Trust him. Just trust him. And that trust carries us into every moment of life, leading us to Isaiah's next reminder about trusting his plan and his timing. And it's his call to trust in every moment. It's a natural response to God, who has carried us, sustained us, and remained faithful through every chapter of life. Isaiah 46:5 tells us, "With whom will you compare me or count me equal? To whom will you liken me that we may be compared?" You know, God knows we're tempted to compare him to earthly strength or human ability. So he asks a powerful question. To whom will you compare me? See, God's reminding us there is no one like him. No one is as faithful. No one as constant. No one as capable of carrying our lives from beginning to end. But we must recognize his sovereignty over our lives. When I just said that, we must trust him, must recognize this. I realize I sound like I'm being preachy. Let me tell you, you need to... This is a relational kind of recognition. I recognize I don't always do well in this area. You ever use a GPS to drive someplace? Okay. Before there was electronic gizmos, we had maps. And I would plot my course and I would watch for road signs and so forth, and I would trust that the map was accurate to get me where I was going. Well, now I plug a destination in. I haven't even seen the full view, but here I'm placing my trust in this is going to get me to this destination.
And sometimes it isn't right.
Pardon me?
And sometimes it isn't where you're at.
And sometimes it's not where... Trusting God with our lives is a lot like following those step-by-step instructions. Turn right, turn left, go straight, go this, and so forth. And because he's always been faithful, we know that we're going to get there. Now here's where I run into problems. Sometimes I want to ignore that GPS. Sometimes I want to take my own route because I feel I know better. Trusting in God is a lot more like being the passenger in the back seat that trusts that the driver is going to get us to our destination. That's a lot more like it, because you give me any amount of control, even if it's the decision on which turns to make, I'm likely to rebel at some point and say, no, I don't want to go down that road. But is that truly trusting God? As you pointed out, I can't trust technology all the time. I used to, I reference GPS. I know that's an older device now, but I used to say my GPS was directionally challenged. They're gizmos. They have flaws. God does not have flaws. If we can truly trust that he's leading us to where he wants us to go, we can forget about the steering wheel and sit back and enjoy the ride. But that's not how I'm always built, and I'm just being honest about that. So to say we must recognize his sovereignty, I'm not standing here as a person who always gets that right. But I will tell you that it is the best route, the best course of action to take, is to recognize God is sovereign. He knows what's best for us. We can trust in Him. And it's trusting His timing. If we trust His plan, we can also trust His timing. And one of the greatest challenges of aging is the feeling that time is slipping away. Okay, I can look back at the last 10 years and see all the amazing things that have happened. I got just over 10 years left of my working life. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? Really?
And we're through with our working life.
And you're past those working years, and you've enjoyed life in a different way. And that's amazing.
Well, I don't know if I have or not.
You don't know if you have or not. But
She takes care of a whole family then.
oh, gotcha. God's timing is never rushed, and it's never late. God's timing is perfect even when we feel we are running out of time. He's not limited by our age. He's not constrained by our clocks. He fulfills His purpose exactly when they need to be fulfilled. Just a few days ago, an opportunity to apply for a lead pastor position came my way. And so I gave it some thought, and I'm like, man, I'm not feeling that this is God's timing at all. I'm not feeling like, but I thought, well, but am I not being obedient by applying for it? Because it's been presented a couple different ways. And so I got home from work after dwelling on this for a 9-hour shift. All right. I get home and I tell my wife, I said, well, hon, I'm going to apply for that pastor position. And her response was, are you kidding me? And we discussed it, and she was right. I was, in my head, I'm like, well, okay, try to be obedient about this. In no way did it resemble any other time that we have heard from God. Not at all. Not one bit of it really resembled. It's interesting how we can convince ourselves of something that really isn't God talking to us. And so I can assure you I'm not putting in my hat for that. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste the church's time.
I was clerk of session of this church for 18 years.
Pardon me?
Clerk of the session for 18 years.
Yeah.
And it's been about 3 or 4 years I decided somebody else needs to do this because of my age.
Okay.
I might not be here tomorrow.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Time to move that responsibility to the next person. Mm-hmm. And so, but I share that with you because we do need to embrace each moment as an opportunity to grow in faith and service, but not every opportunity is going to be right for us. That's part of learning how to listen to God's voice, by the way. Every day is a gift. Every day. And every season is an assignment. Every moment is a chance to trust Him more deeply. Hey, listen, God's not finished with you or me. God's not done using you or me. And God is not through writing your story either. The God who carried us first will carry us faithfully to the end. So this passage in Isaiah 46, it gives us a sweeping view of God's heart toward His people. A God who carries us from the womb to old age, who sustains us through every season, and who invites us to trust Him with every moment. Because our lives may shift, probably will shift. Our strength may rise and fall, and our roles may change, but God remains the same, and that's what we can press into. His promises are timeless, and His presence is everlasting, and His strength is unfailing. And no season is wasted. No chapter is forgotten. No moment is beyond his reach. The God who formed us is the God who carries us. And the God who carries us is the God who strengthens us. And the God who strengthens us is the God who calls us to trust him fully, deeply, and continually. And this is the hope that Isaiah offers. We are held by a God who never lets go. Well, you know, I can't close without a challenge. That just wouldn't be me. So as you step into the week ahead, I'm going to challenge you to choose one simple but powerful act of trust. Maybe it's surrendering a fear about the future. Maybe it's embracing a new role God is opening for you. Maybe it's offering your story to encourage someone younger in the faith. And maybe it's just resting in the truth that God is carrying you right now, right in the season you are.
So I've already done that.
Okay.
I have a daughter who's a neuropsychologist. And she and her husband have said, if you feel like you can no longer be at home without, feeling something could go wrong, you come live with us.
Amen.
And she's a neuropsychologist, so she's going to know what's going on in here all the time.
That might be scary.
Just to her.
Well, whatever season you're in, take one step that says, Lord, I trust you at this moment. He's the God who's carried you this far and will continue to carry you still. Let's pray, shall we? Lord, thank you for this blessed time of fellowship. God, we trust that you have a purpose for us being here together today. And we lead into that. We thank you for it. God, I pray that we would be able to walk strong this week. Maybe not always physically, but walk strong in the certainty that you're with us, that you're guiding us, that we have assurance of your care. God, I continue to pray blessing on this church. I thank you for the many lives that have been reached through the people that have attended here. In Jesus' name, amen.